I'm thinking that the narrative around ETH is going to be wrong. It's going to catch people offside. People have basically, because there's been no new money in the space, so they've sold their ETH to buy Bitcoin because of the ETF, right? And this point in the cycle. Makes sense, fine. Then what happens is the ETF is announced. What is everybody going to do after the Bitcoin ETF is announced? Every trader is going to switch their bet from Bitcoin to ETH. And that changes the dynamic.
The founder and CEO of Real Vision, Raoul, has been a strong advocate for Ethereum ever since he began acquiring this leading altcoin years ago. Like many early cryptocurrency enthusiasts, Pal's initial foray was into Bitcoin. However, approximately a decade ago, he decided to divest his Bitcoin holdings after realizing a tenfold return on his initial investment. Pal firmly believes that Ethereum stands out as the superior choice due to its exceptional network effects. He asserts that while the Bitcoin network has been resistant to significant development and evolution, Ethereum has welcomed a wide array of development initiatives, fueling its popularity and widespread adoption. Around 2 years ago, Pal made the observation that in the world of decentralized finance, non-fungible tokens, and even the metaverse, almost everything is effectively denominated in Ethereum, including the value of designers' work, among other things. He envisions Ethereum rapidly emerging as the predominant digital currency, with Bitcoin serving as the pristine collateral and foundational layer. While Pal still retains some Bitcoin holdings, his larger stake is in Ethereum, which he anticipates will be one of the standout success stories during the forthcoming crypto bull market. In a recent interview with Crypt, Pal shared his insights on the cryptocurrency market as it approaches what many believe will be a highly profitable and rewarding period for all crypto investors. While Pal acknowledges the enthusiasm surrounding Bitcoin exchange-traded funds, he highlights that both Ethereum and Solana are poised for even more significant breakthroughs and substantial upward movements in 2024. In the upcoming segments, we'll provide clips from the interview where Pal delves into a crucial price level that could pave the way for a substantial Ethereum price surge.
It's really Solana and ETH.
Solana and ETH.
Yeah, nothing else adds up to much. It's just Solana and ETH, and of which Solana is the larger bet. I haven't held much Bitcoin for a while because, I look at this in terms of network effects, and my view is that more things are being built on Ethereum. It's a richer, deeper network, more use cases, and over time, I think the value of the Ethereum network will be more valuable than the Bitcoin network, unless something changes. Now, ordinals and stuff like that, maybe, let's see. And so it's just from that thesis alone that I haven't held much Bitcoin. I've just thought it'll underperform. Now, it always outperforms in crypto spring. The least risk asset in that space always outperforms at first. Then what happens as spring turns into summer, you start getting outperformance of alts, and particularly the large alts first, and then the smaller alts later. So there's nothing unusual about what's going on. I also very interesting to see the chart of ETH Bitcoin, kind of the long-term weekly chart. It's been a very interesting, that to me is an incredibly interesting chart, because I actually draw the wedge coming up from 2017 low through the 2020 lows. This is what I'm really interested in.
Holy shit.
If this is right, this is a fucking massive wedge pattern. And we're putting in the stuff that I look at, DeMark indicators, everything else. They're suggesting the low comes this week, next week, the week after. So I'm thinking that the narrative around ETH is going to be wrong. It's going to catch people offside. People have basically, because there's been no new money in the space, so they've sold their ETH to buy Bitcoin because of the ETF, right? And this point in the cycle. Makes sense, fine. Then what happens is the ETF is announced. What is everybody going to do after the Bitcoin ETF is announced? Every trader is going to switch their bet from Bitcoin to ETH. And that changes the dynamic. Now, ETH has been kind of, as I said, struggling around a bit. But once it clears 1900, it gets really interesting. I think I put out a chart yesterday on the ETH chart on my Twitter feed. So what we've got is, it's an Elliott wave chart, and it's a beautiful technical pattern of this lovely kind of flag. So Elliott wave, you tend to get 5 wave advances, ABC declines in a bull market. So you had this wave up 1, it retraces all the way back down, doesn't make a new low. That's a wave 2. Then you start on what is a wave 3. Wave 3s are the big dynamic waves. But within that, it breaks down to subwaves. So this was wave 1. Wave 2 was the correction. And now if you break that, you go into what's known in the most exciting thing of Elliott wave is a 3 of 3. That's when you get the double acceleration point. What we've just seen in Solana feels like it's going to happen in ETH. Particularly now everybody's underweight ETH. People have seen the Solana move, let's say the Bitcoin ETF comes, you break that trend line, which is about 1900, and before you know it, you're on your way to 2,500 and beyond.
Before the interview, Pal shared an Ethereum chart on Twitter with the caption, "A beautiful chart." According to Pal, the chart illustrates a nearly complete Elliott wave pattern, a technical analysis tool used to understand price patterns in relation to shifts in investor sentiment and psychology. The Elliott wave theory identifies impulse waves that establish a pattern and corrective waves that counter the prevailing trend. In Pal's chart, Ethereum has undergone 2 upward waves and their corresponding corrective waves. This suggests that we are approaching the final phase of the pattern, the 3rd upward wave, which is typically more substantial than the initial 2. Pal anticipates that this wave will be preceded by a smaller upward movement, likely surpassing the $1,900 mark. Following this, Ethereum could potentially reach as high as $3,200 per token. During the interview, Pal also delved into his broader economic perspective and discussed why it supports the recent influx of liquidity in the cryptocurrency market. The former Goldman Sachs executive referred to a recent statement from BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, made on October 16, in which Fink highlighted how investors are turning to cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin as a flight to quality.
Around the time Larry was saying what he said, the markets were starting to figure out that the real problem was this excess supply issuance of bonds, and that inflation wasn't going up, but bond yields kept rising. And it was that moment that gold and crypto picked up very quickly, is that the more bond yields go up, the more they started going up. That correlation changed. And that correlation was driven by the fact, I think, that the market knew if bond yields are going to go up like this, the Fed or the government or somebody's going to intervene. So you get closer to the cowbell, the stimulus, somebody's going to do something. So I think that was a really big factor in it, and things started taking off. It's like, okay, if this bond market's going to get out of control, then you need to hide somewhere. And also, the banks had started going down again as well, if you remember. Yeah, October 16th, like the banks had this little peak and then started dropping like a stone. And so, again, the market's job is to forecast the probability of stimulus or a flight to safety. And Bitcoin always does well out of it. So that's what I think started it off. And I think Larry saying the same thing around the same time that the banks turned around, also adds fuel to the fire. I don't know if there's any economic data out that day, but there was probably something around that as well. What's going on is interest rates are too damn high, and they have to issue ongoing bonds to cover the deficits, but they have to roll the bonds from last 4 years, from 3 years ago, 4 years ago in the pandemic cycle, from 1% interest rate to 5% interest rates, or 5.5%. And the problem is, to do that, you have to issue yet more bonds to pay for that. So we're just getting awash with issuance. And this has been my argument about the everything code, is that there is no way governments can issue bonds at 5% interest when you're 100% of GDP in debt, because there's not enough economic growth to cover it. So the central bank has to buy it. And what's happening is, here we are pushing the central bank to buy it. Now, whether Janet's doing that on purpose is like, Jay, you're going to have to take this. But I think there's a game being played, is like, okay, we'll show the stress, we'll create the stress, we need to cut rates, we can roll this debt at lower levels. And if we can find the right excuse, like a recession, we can push it onto the Fed balance sheet. So if you go back to 2008, everybody got the get out of jail free card of 0 interest rates. So nobody had to pay interest on their debt. That was like a gift, right? 0 interest rates. Every government refunded at 0, but for some weird reason, they did it between 3 and 5 years. That 3 and 5 year debt cycle just keeps rolling over. It's exactly the Bitcoin halving cycle. It's exactly the economic cycle. It's exactly the US election cycle. They're all the same thing. It's this super cycle, this everything code. And we're into that point of the cycle now where the balance sheet should start rising to cover the debts from the previous cycle.
Raoul Pal is of the opinion that we are currently in the midst of the crypto spring, but he foresees a gradual transition into a highly bullish synergy of cryptocurrency and macroeconomic factors in 2024. The Real Vision founder anticipates that the crypto market will close out the year on a strong note, with a possible sideways movement in early 2024. However, he expresses strong conviction that, following the halving event and the expected injection of liquidity by the Federal Reserve and other central banks, cryptocurrency asset prices will experience a substantial uptrend. Pal's prediction points to a robust and parabolic bull market lasting for at least 18 months. Now, the question is, do you share his outlook and predictions for cryptocurrencies like Solana and Bitcoin? We invite you to share your thoughts, comments, and observations in the comments section below. For more Daily Dose Crypto news, check out these 2 awesome videos on your screen. Click now and we will see you on the next video.